Hello, and welcome to another episode of Virtual Legality. I'm your host, Richard Hoeg, managing member of the Hoeg Law business law firm of Northville, Michigan, and today we're going to talk about a video game that honestly I don't think we talk about enough in this space, and that game is Roblox. If you aren't familiar with it, it is essentially a platform of experiences that other developers outside of the Roblox company make to play within Roblox as a platform, which makes it a somewhat unique type of game in the space, but it's also become very, very popular. A lot of people have made content for this platform, a lot of people have experienced that content, and a lot of people have made a lot of money, which is one of the reasons why we have talked about Roblox in Virtual Legality before, because when this company went public, when people started digging into how folks were making money through making content for this platform, the question became, is Roblox exploiting those developers? Is it exploiting those people that are making content for it because it's becoming so wealthy, it's making so much money from people gaining access to these various experiences, but it isn't paying these people as employees? This question became even more prominent for Roblox when folks started talking about the fact that it was so popular with children and that many of its developers of content and experiences on the Roblox platform were in fact children themselves. And I did that episode in Virtual Legality a couple of years ago. You can check it out now. You can see the comments to that where people were maybe not as thrilled with me as possible for not decrying Roblox's corporate structure incentives and also not decrying capitalism on the whole. But I'll leave that to you to interpret for yourself. What I wanted to talk about today was a story I saw reported on in Game Developer that really raised my eyebrows, which says SEC confirms that Roblox is part of an active and ongoing investigation. Now, they also subheadline this as the focus of the investigation remains unclear, but I wanted to investigate this article. I wanted to see what was happening behind the scenes of what's reported here, and I wanted to talk to you all about it because I don't think it is as obvious what is happening here as these articles would suggest. So, Game Developer says, Roblox is part of an active investigation being conducted by U.S. regulator, the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC. Now, importantly here, the Securities and Exchange Commission is focused, as you might expect, on securities. Now, if that term doesn't mean anything to you, I don't blame you. Securities are, in essence, the way that people give money to corporations or other entities to do things. Now, that can often take place in a stock market through the exchange of money for stock, but it can also take place as loans for the lending of money for bonds or promissory notes or what have you. So when you think of stocks and bonds, that's really what we're aimed at with securities. It becomes more complicated. When we talk about cryptocurrencies and other things that may or may not be securities, there's actually ongoing fights about that behind the scenes. But what's important to note here is that the Securities and Exchange Commission is focused on stocks, bonds, and what investors learn about companies so that the markets for those stocks and bonds are as fair and transparent as possible. As reported by Bloomberg, and we'll get to that article in just a minute, the SEC confirmed Roblox is involved in an active and ongoing investigation, but refused to elaborate further, and that's to be expected. If they are involved in an active investigation, that's one of the areas where if you go and you ask for information from a federal agency, they can say, look, we don't have to give you any information about anything that's ongoing because we don't want to jeopardize what that investigation entails. Responding to that Freedom of Information Act request, the SEC said providing additional information could harm our ongoing enforcement proceeding. Bloomberg has been unable to learn more about the investigation. Roblox owner Roblox Corp has yet to respond to a request for comment from Bloomberg, while the SEC declined to provide more context. Roblox is no stranger to headlines. The platform, which allows users to build and play video game experiences, has faced heavy criticism over a perceived lack of child protections. And you say, Rick, you just told me that the SEC is only interested in securities and transparency to investors. It is indeed. But the more sexy headlines for Roblox, the ones that really kind of get the clicks that I see on my timeline all the time, are, is Roblox exploitative? Is it allowing things like child predators access to children through the platform? And so this article, and we'll see the Bloomberg article that is its basis, dovetails from SEC is reporting that there's an active investigation to the platform has a problem with child safety pretty quickly. And I wanted to talk about that because I don't think that's actually what's in play here. Continuing on with this article, the company has cut moderation costs in an attempt to appease Wall Street while endangering kids with a platform that exposes them to illicit content, etc., claims a specific report. Once again, Roblox Corp rejected these allegations and claimed the report was inaccurate. Now, we have more research to do, though, because that's obviously just a summary article of another article. We're already 2 levels into playing telephone on this particular topic. Let's go see what Bloomberg had to say itself. So they say much the same thing in their headline. SEC says game service Roblox is part of an active investigation and that the agency withholds details. That's all to be expected, but let's see what they say. Roblox Corp, the video game service used by millions of young people, is part of an active investigation by the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. Again, remembering that the SEC, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, not so interested in what's happening with young people, not interested in enforcing criminal laws for protection of young people. We'll see that writ large when we get to the actual federal websites as part of this video. But that is kind of the hook for this article. It's the hook for why you should be concerned with Roblox. And I think it's a little bit unfair reporting in this context. Responding to that Freedom of Information Act request, the Commission said in a letter Friday that it couldn't share correspondence between staffers referencing Roblox, saying it could cause harm to the ongoing enforcement proceeding. We have confirmed with Division of Enforcement staff that there are responsive emails between enforcement staff referencing Roblox and that these emails are part of that active and ongoing investigation, the Commission said, but Bloomberg News couldn't confirm the subject of the investigation. Hunter Brook Media reported in November that Roblox was under investigation by the SEC, citing their Freedom of Information Act or FOIA requests. And more importantly for our conversation right now, in October, the now defunct short seller Hindenburg Research published a report on child safety concerns at Roblox and also alleged that the company had inflated its metrics, including the number of users who regularly play Roblox games and the amount of time they spend on average on the platform. So we're 2 articles in, we're halfway through this second article, but here's the first time we see why the SEC might be interested in this company. And that is to say, the SEC is interested in making sure that if you are a publicly traded company that is selling its stocks and having those stocks sold amongst your investors, that you are transparent with all of the metrics that go into valuing your company. And so if somebody accuses you of inflating your metrics, including your number of users and the amount of time they spend on your service, that's the kind of thing that raises the SEC's eyebrows. It's the kind of thing that can make an enforcement action take place. We totally reject the claims made in the report, a Roblox spokesperson said at the time. The authors are admittedly short sellers and have an agenda irrespective of the substance of Roblox business model and results. And if you aren't familiar with the phrase short sellers, these are the folks that operate in a stock market betting against the company's value going up. That's the most easy way to understand who they are. That's what short selling means. Mechanistically, it means that they essentially sign contracts with other parties that say, we can sell you 10,000 shares of this company or whatever other number makes sense at the price it is today, and you have to buy them from us at some point in the future. And if the stock price goes down, we can buy up those shares when it goes down, and we can sell them to you at the higher price, and we make money, and that's how our business model works. Obviously, if the stock price goes up, that's a problem for us because we then have to buy those shares anyway, and we lose money on that same transaction. That's what a short seller does. And so what Roblox is saying here in the context of this statement is, look, it is in their best interest to try to drive our stock price down. That's how they make money. So we don't have to take this report as coming from a completely unbiased source. And that makes all the sense in the world. But again, Bloomberg continues on this track, putting aside the transparency issues and starts talking about those children's safety issues. The video game company has faced scrutiny over children's safety on the platform. Since 2018, at least 24 people have been arrested by police in the U.S., accused of abusing or abducting victims they'd met or groomed using Roblox, Bloomberg News reported in July. In 2024, Roblox implemented at least 40 safety changes to its platform, including barring children under age 13 from participating in social chatting games. And if that under age 13 concept rings a bell to you, you might have watched some of our COPPA videos here in Virtual Legality, where we talk about the COPPA law and the COPPA rule applying data protection privacy considerations to children under the age of 13, 12-year-olds and under. Shares of Roblox fell 11% on Thursday after the company reported slower than expected growth in daily users of its service. So this is the Bloomberg article that gives rise to all that, but I want to also talk about the Bloomberg article that talks about that initial report on what Roblox is doing and why they should be concerned. So here's a market report from Bloomberg last October that says Roblox tumbles as Hindenburg bets against gaming platform. You heard them reference this company as now defunct. The Hindenburg Reports project actually winds up disbanding earlier this year. I don't know that that has anything to do with Roblox in particular, but it is worth noting that this short seller didn't actually survive. Hindenburg said in its report that Roblox has inflated key metrics and alleged that it doesn't have sufficient safety screens to prevent pedophiles from using the platform. And then we get that statement where Roblox says we reject the claims and the authors are short sellers. Roblox's share price is strongly associated with user growth and engagement. Over the last few years, the platform has seen massive growth, with Chief Executive Officer Dave Baszucki now aiming for a goal of 1 billion daily active users. Currently, Roblox reports 80 million users logging onto the platform every day. This is not a minor company. This is not a small piece of the video game pie, even if you might not otherwise engage in Roblox or Fortnite or any other platforms that see a lot of success from kind of niche audiences in gaming. Hindenburg's report accuses the company of inflating both the number of users who regularly play Roblox games and the amount of time they spend on average on the platform. And then we get a little information on the systems that they use to determine that those metrics were in error, according to them. Further analysis of playtime showed numerous games in which obvious bot accounts remained in-game for more than 24 hours straight. And we've seen bots and platform metrics being confused by bots be an issue in virtual legality before. Here now, also with respect to Twitter, when we were discussing Elon Musk's takeover purchase of that company, our representative sample flagged millions of zombie engagement hours that can majorly skew Roblox's reported average engagement. And that's important because if you're a business and you're selling currency or cosmetics to people that are otherwise engaged on your service, it doesn't help your business to have bots doing those things, but it can help it look like there's more possible sales opportunities if you've got those numbers that you report to investors. So that is a problem, right? If there are a lot of zombie accounts, if there are metrics that are not rightfully saying how successful your platform actually is, if investors can't get the right information to know what to value your company at, that is going to be a problem for regulators in the United States. Over the past 4 quarters, Roblox bookings, etc., there's a bunch of numbers here. It's a Bloomberg report article. On user safety, the report cites a recent Bloomberg Business Week investigation into predatory behavior on Roblox that was based on interviews with more than 20 current and former employees. This continues on from what we saw discussed in that original article, saying, hey, they might have issues here. Most of the safety workers interviewed by Bloomberg Business Week said it was harder to pursue pedophiles at Roblox than at other online platforms, in part because the company allows users to create an account without entering any real names, email addresses, or phone numbers. And I wanted to point this particular paragraph out to you all because this is kind of the dark side of something like a COPPA rule, which says you can't collect personal information from kids. One of the ways to try to solve this is you say, we're not going to collect any information from anybody, right? If we're going to get in trouble from knowing that there are kids on our platform and not doing enough to satiate you, we saw this in the virtual legality video I did on Genshin Impact very recently, then maybe we're just going to say no information from anybody. We're going to avoid all of that. And then the opposite end of that is safety workers say we can't track adults doing bad things. We can't track these issues for our safety because we're not collecting any of this real information. Hindenburg's report raised concerns with the lack of screening upon sign-up. The researchers created multiple fake accounts as children and found they were quickly exposed to sexual content. All this is bad, right? This is a short seller. They want to say these are the reasons why this company could face liability, could face exposure, could just face negative public interest in the very near future if all of this is happening behind the scenes. Roblox's partnership with big brands, including Walmart, L'Oreal, and Nike, alleviate our concerns, says this Bloomberg analysis, about brand safety, but it may still need to invest in parent controls and cleaning up bots. And this I thought was interesting because this is the way the real world works. You lean on people that otherwise have a strong investment, a strong incentive to police for bad actors. So you look at Nike, you look at Walmart, you look at these big companies, and you say, we are disinclined to think this is a major problem because all of these big companies that have all this big money invested in partnerships with this company would have looked at it themselves. Obviously, that falls apart at the end state if everybody says, well, everybody else is looking at things. We've seen that with big investments. We've seen that in venture capital. We've seen that in other places where essentially everybody assumes that everybody else is doing due diligence, and you get into a position where things are very bad. But there's no indication just from this article that that is in fact the case with Roblox, even if there is this one short seller report that suggests that it might be a problem. Which all leads us to understanding what is happening here today when they say the SEC is reviewing things. First, I want to talk about FOIA. If you aren't familiar with Freedom of Information Act concepts, it is a statute in the United States that says, look, the federal government is only given power and authority by the people. It is a function of the people. It's a democracy. And so the people should be able to go and ask its government that has tens of thousands of people doing all these things across the geography of the country, what it is that they are doing. And so there's a statute that says you can send them a letter. You can ask them to give you this information on what it is that they're doing. You generally have to give a search term. Tell me everything that you've ever said about Roblox. That's how these things look. Mostly they're used by journalists or other political activists in the United States, but that's what a Freedom of Information Act request means. You might also hear FOIA as a term related to state government or other more local or municipal governments in the United States. Generally speaking, there are laws in each state and in each location that have something like this concept. You owe us a certain amount of transparency. Some constitutions of various states even have that included directly therein. But they aren't usually FOIA. FOIA is just used as a term that's essentially shorthand for, I'm going to send a letter and ask for my government to give me this information. That's what FOIA means. But there are exceptions, the most notable of which I have highlighted on our screen right now, that says you can't ask for information that could reasonably be expected to interfere with enforcement proceedings. There's other exceptions to FOIA, such as personal data about various people working within the government, other things that could otherwise jeopardize or endanger people individually. But the one that we're interested in right now is if it could reasonably be expected to interfere with enforcement proceedings, then we can reject your FOIA request. Now, that's important because the government is made up of people just like these corporations, just like the journalists that look at these stories. So when they say at the SEC, we're not going to hand over this information because it could harm an ongoing investigation, it's important to understand that that's one of the categories that they can claim. It's very difficult for us to check because we can't see the underlying information on the outside. And governments have been known to use some of these exceptions a little over broadly in order to avoid complying with FOIA requests. Now, we have no reason to believe in this particular story that the SEC would be taking any special steps to try to protect Roblox from bad press or itself from bad press, but we do also have to acknowledge the political situation, which is that we are engaged in an administrative transition to a new presidency. There's a lot of noise around a lot of agencies that probably don't want to get involved too much in public with anything, especially on a tech side when you have everything happening on social media right now. So we do have to at least note that this is one of the areas where they can say, we can't give you that information. And really the journalist, Bloomberg, anybody else doesn't have the ability to tell them that they're wrong right now. Which is also to say that as the FOIA website here says, it's important to get the right agency when you're asking for these questions. So Bloomberg knew from November that somebody was claiming that the SEC was investigating this company, so they knew to ask the SEC. But as the FOIA website itself says, it's important that you identify the correct agency for your request. There are over 100 federal agencies, and each is responsible for handling its own FOIA requests. You can use our search tool. You may search for a specific agency here, etc. But this is where I wanted to talk about the various agencies that could come into play here just from what we've seen discussed in the Bloomberg article. So first we start with the SEC. The SEC's mission is to protect investors, not users, not consumers, not children, the people that are giving money to Roblox Corporation. That's who the SEC is designed to protect. And in that case, they're designed to protect it through forcing transparency and accuracy in the reports that that company makes. They are to maintain fair, orderly, and efficient markets and facilitate capital formation. So if you don't like capitalism, these are the guys you also don't like, the SEC. But in general, they are not interested in half of what the Bloomberg article and the game developer article say. And that doesn't mean that they don't care about children being safe or pedophilia or anything else. Every good-hearted person wants to keep the children safe and out of harm's way. But the SEC, like any other federal agency, only has the authority given to it by Congress. And in this case, the SEC is only investigating things related to investor protection, transparency, and maintaining fair, orderly, and efficient markets. If you're interested in children's safety, you might ask someone like the FTC. We've seen them discussed in Virtual Legality before. Here is a copy of the Children's Online Privacy Protection Rule as promulgated by the FTC. This is what protects children's data, or is supposed to protect children's data, and FTC actions in lawsuit land or otherwise seek to enforce this rule to protect children's data. Otherwise, you might be interested, if you're interested in the exploitation side of things, in checking whether the Department of Labor has an issue here. The Department of Labor at the federal level is the one responsible for enforcing wage and hour laws, making sure employees are getting paid correctly. If you think something is wrong with the way Roblox is operating its dev system, as we saw in various YouTube videos a couple of years ago, and I think even continuing now, this is where you might look to see if a complaint was filed. Or if you really want to heighten things, you go and you talk to the Department of Justice, right? The Department of Justice enforces the criminal laws, enforces those laws that protect kids. Here we have a website that is tips on protecting kids at home and online. And the Department of Justice, if they had an investigation or they were otherwise interested in Roblox, might be someone that you ask on this particular question. So in answer to whether Roblox is in trouble or not, if we look at their stock price, it hasn't really fluctuated based on any of this news. It did fluctuate a little bit on their earnings report, which came in a little softer than they had indicated that was likely in this most recent reporting quarter. But overall, I think this article about the SEC investigation sounds like a lot and is certainly being reported on as a lot with respect to bringing in all the children's safety complaints and possible issues that Roblox might have with that in the future. But the fact that there's an SEC investigation does not, to my mind, mean that any of that is happening behind the scenes at a federal investigatory level right this second. It would surprise me a lot if the SEC were investigating any of those public safety concerns, except in respect of whether or not Roblox is properly reporting on what their liabilities might be with respect to those children's safety concerns. So the SEC is confirming they're in an active and ongoing investigation. We've talked about the fact that that benefits them from not complying with FOIA requests. So they might still be in an active ongoing investigation. It might be an investigation that is on its last legs. We don't know what it was about because Bloomberg can't confirm, which is a little bit of a surprise because Bloomberg News undoubtedly has sources with access to the SEC and other federal agencies. But overall, if you love Roblox, I don't think this is the end state right now, but it is a story you are definitely going to want to keep track of in the immediate future. If this was interesting to you, if this was informative to you, please consider supporting the channel through Patreon, through memberships, super chats, or just otherwise giving up votes, down votes, comments, or otherwise interacting with YouTube and telling folks like your friends that we're having conversations like this in this space. Thank you so much for being here in Virtual Legality. Please do leave any other questions or comments to this video. I try to respond to as many as I can, and I will see you on the next episode of Virtual Legality. Virtual Legality is a YouTube video series with audio podcast versions presented as commentary and for education and entertainment purposes only. It does not constitute legal advice and does not create an attorney-client relationship. If you have legal questions about the topics discussed, please consult your own legal counsel.